Chodesh Tishrei Women's Circle. Everyone say hello. You're on live. I am so honored that you're joining me. If you're in person, if you're listening to this recording, if it works, then that's a miracle. Let's dedicate today's learning. It's been a rough year, a really hard year, and we just want to dive in and dedicate today's learning that Hashem should bless us with a renewed year, with new energy, regenerate, a much better year with revealed brachot, return of the hostages, only good news for all of Am Yisrael, Achdus, a safe return of all the soldiers, the end to all fighting, and the coming of Mashiach. I have to move my, don't dip your paintbrush in my tea.
Oh no, I have tea with
I personally, I was thinking if I should share this. I was not feeling great. Also last week and this week, I'm just not feeling 100% myself. I was like in one of those days where I wanted to crawl in a hole and wake up in 10 years to not feel 100%. I'm like, I'm still gonna give a shiur and I'm gonna be honest about how I feel, because in this class, you're gonna get the best of me and the not best of me, and everyone should feel safe and comfortable to be their best selves, not their best selves always. Not everyone is always feeling 100%, and that's real life. And hopefully from my not 100%, we'll get something beautiful as well. But Baruch Hashem, I woke up today feeling a lot better. So that's what you're getting today. Okay, Rosh Hashana, one of my favorite shiurim. There's so much depth, and we'll see what we can cover. Okay, so the class is going to be also Rosh Hashana, but also a little bit about the energy of the month, because every month in this Rosh Chodesh Women's Circle, we speak about the energies of the month based on Sefer Yetzirah. We go through the astrological sign of the month in Tishrei, that is Libra, which is the sign of the scales. The letter that Hashem creates, Sefer Yetzirah, in the book of Yetzirah, the earliest Kabbalistic text, it tells us which letter Hashem created the month through. Someone asks if they mind closing the music till after the shiur. They usually offer to. Thanks, Ina. You're the best. The letter that Hashem created this month through is the letter of Lamed, which we're going to talk about. And we'll also focus a little bit on the physical bodily sense of every month that we can grow through. And every month there's another bodily sense that we grow through. Anyone remember what it was in Elul? I think it was walking or movement. And in Tishrei, it's the physical, our sexuality or marital relations, union between spouses, which obviously is really what the energy of the entire Rosh Hashana is about. So if you're at the Elul shiur, or if not, I'll just recap that the way that the paradigm that the Chassidut looks at this whole month of Tishrei is that Tishrei and Elul is one giant love fest. It's our time to fall in love with Hashem. So Elul, we go through, obviously we married Hashem. Our original wedding was a Matan Torah with the sound of the shofar. And Hashem says, it's not, you married me then, but Hashem asks us to recommit to Him every year. So just to preface all this, before we get into the details of the love fest of Elul and Tishrei, there's 3 themes of Rosh Hashana, and I brought you the source of this in your sources. It's in Maseches Rosh Hashana, in Talmud Maseches Rosh Hashana, page Lamed Daled, Bet. The Gemara says, "My time. What is the reason of Rosh Hashana?" Amar Rava. Rava says, "Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu." Hashem said, "Imru lefonai." Hashem, say before me, Rosh Hashana, Malchios, Zichronos, and Shofros. These 3 themes are the central themes of Rosh Hashana that we're going to cover today. Malchios, which means king, a coronation, or accepting Hashem as king, Melucha, crowning Hashem as king. Zichronos, which means remembrances, and we'll see what that means. And Shofaros, the blowing the shofar. Malchios, the Gemara continues, Kadesh Tamlichuni Aleichem, so that you crown me upon you as your king. Zichronos, remembrances, Kadesha Yavo, Lefanai Zichronechem Latova, so that your remembrances will rise before me for good. Ubameh, and all this is done through what? Through shofar. Now the Gemara bases this on the pasuk in the Torah, in Vayikra, that speaks about Rosh Hashana. Dabrel b'nei Yisrael, speak to b'nei Yisrael, Leimar b'chodesh hashvi, in the 7th month, which is Tishrei, be'echad l'chodesh, in the 1st of the month, yeh lachem Shabbaton, on the 1st of Tishrei, which is coming up Rosh Hashana, will be a Shabbaton. Zichron, which is the idea of Zichronos. Teruah, which means blowing the shofar. Mikra Kodesh, a day that we don't do work, which is why we abstain from work Rosh Hashana. Kol malachas v'adol asasu, we don't do any work, etc. And then later on, it also says, so that you will, so we have the Zichron, the Teruah, and then it says, Kadesha Tamlichuni Aleichem, that you crown me as your king later on. So that is where the source in the Torah for these 3 themes of Rosh Hashana. So much so that there's even sources of Rishonim and Achronim, and in the Gemara as well, that hold that in the Musaf prayer, the reason that the Musaf Rosh Hashana is so long is because there's 3 paragraphs or sections of Musaf, one called Malchios, which is a few paragraphs about Adam Harishon, historically crowning Hashem as his king. Then there's Zichronos, all the remembrances of the in history that we want Hashem to remember. And then there's Shofaros, all the times in the Torah that we speak about blowing the shofar. Some people even say that saying these 3 paragraphs are midoraisa. I don't think that's the psak, but there are sources, there's arguments whether or not it's midoraisa to actually say these paragraphs in shul. The custom is, in all the shuls, that after each one of these malchios, after we read the paragraphs of malchios, we blow the shofar. We have the sounding of the shofar. After zichronos, we blow the shofar, and then after shofaros, we blow the shofar. In Ashkenazi shuls, we only blow it in the repetition of the Amidah and Chazaras Hashatz, but in Sephardi and Hasidic shuls, we blow it even in the silent Amidah. So even when you're doing Shemona Esrei, but if you're davening alone without a minyan, you don't blow the shofar. So that's why it's the shofar adds this extra element of in our tefillah. So that's why it's better to daven in shul if possible. But you still have to hear the main mitzvah of Rosh Hashana is to listen to the shofar, to hear 100 tkiyos, even if you weren't in shul, even if you weren't able to come to shul, that's okay. Have a Chabad rabbi, like my husband, or come to your house. I actually found out that I'm allowed to blow shofar for women only. We have different chiyuvim. So every year I say I'm going to learn. There's a lot of learning that's to give to practice the right breathing, the right kavanot, the length of time of each breath. So I've never done it, but I'm only allowed to blow for women because we have a different chiyuv than men. So if a man hears me, then he might be, he's not, his obligation is different than ours. Ours is a minhag, it became halacha. Theirs is from a rabbinic, boys under bar mitzvah is rabbinic, and men above bar mitzvah is biblical. Anyways, that's a side point. So, but I do know how to blow, just not enough for Elul, but not enough for Rosh Hashana yet. I'll let you know, I'll let you guys know when. Then I could go to all the houses of the women who need blowing, and I could blow for them.
Are you saying that you can't blow during the silence of Amidah if you're davening at home, or that you don't have to?
I think that you don't blow when you're davening alone. You don't. You only do it after tefillah, not during the tefillah. Only if you're blowing it with a minyan. Only the Baal Tokea does that. Okay, that's what I understood, but I might be wrong. Okay, so if we go through these themes, the first theme in Chassidut, the idea of Malchios, of crowning Hashem as king. When did this begin? Why Rosh Hashana? Why pick this day for the new year, the Rosh Hashana? Is because the first Rosh Hashana was obviously the day that Adam was created. So although the world was created on the 25th of Elul, which is in a couple of days from now, the whole purpose of the creation of the world was for mankind, because mankind is the only creation that has free choice and is actually able to enter into a real relationship with Hashem. The whole intention of creating the world was for mankind to keep the Torah mitzvos. So the whole intention of the world's creation was Rosh Hashana, and that's why that is the birthday of the world. All of the creation celebrates, would crown Hashem as king. But Adam, actually in Tehillim, we mentioned that Adam sang, I think it's in Mizmar LaDavid, we say it on Friday night, where, if anyone reminds me the words, but where Adam sang Shira to Hashem and asked Hashem to become his king. And that happened on the first of Tishrei, on the day that Adam was created, when he said, Hashem, I want you to crown you as my king. And to remember this as idea of Malucha, we crown on the basic level, we're re-crowning Hashem as king, we're re-choosing to enter into this relationship with Hashem being our king. And Hashem could have obviously made it that he just decides that he's our king and that's it, we don't have a choice in it. But that's not a relationship and that's not a kingship. Like if I chose, like I saw this someone say, if I had 1,000,000 ants and I decide I'm their king, and then if half of them go away from me and I squish them, I'm not a true king over them, right? Doesn't mean I'm their king. It just means I'm a bad person, right? That's not a true kingship. Hashem doesn't want to be a dictator. He wants us to choose to be in this relationship with him. And that's the only way we have an authentic relationship with Hashem. So every single year Hashem says, I want to know if you re-choose me to be your king this year again. That's one element of Rosh Hashana. The other element is Teshuvah. And the Teshuvah comes from Adam, on the first day of his creation, again on Tishrei, the first time that someone did Teshuvah in history was also on Rosh Hashana, when Adam sinned with a Eitz Hadas, and then Hashem forgave him. And Hashem said, I'll read it for you in the Medrash, you are a sign unto your children as you are judged before me this day. It's in Medrash for Yikarabah, 29:1, and emerged forgiven. So your children will be judged before me on this day, Zehayom, Tchilas Masecha, on this day, and they will emerge forgiven. And the message is that it is human, because the first human on his first day, the perfect man, sinned, the ultimate, the only Avera that he had, the only mitzvah he had, he transgressed. So that it's human to sin and it's divine to forgive. And that's like embedded into the very first day of creation. And every year, Rosh Hashana, we remember and we remind ourselves it's human to mess up. We're meant to mess up. We're not meant to be perfect. That's why God created us and didn't suffice with all the angels that we're perfect. That's why we're here. That is Hashem's ultimate desire in creating the world. We're going to mess up, and that it's within and it's divine for Hashem to forgive and for us to forgive, to learn from Hashem, to forgive ourselves, like we mentioned about forgiving your child. Can you forgive your child? So that's one of the second elements of Teshuvah, and where Teshuvah comes in, and Tashuv Hey, and we'll speak about that a little bit later on when we speak about the shofar and what true forgiveness is. Now, going back to the idea of Malchus, of crowning Hashem as our king, in Chassidut, we look at an even deeper dimension of that as this love fest, that really what's happening on an even deeper level is that in Elul, we said, was our time to get to know Hashem, where Hashem wants to know our authentic selves. That's what Hamelach Basada is, the Yud Gil Midas Rachmim shining. It's our time now in Elul, the last 11 days of Elul, or 9 days, to re-enter and to just date Hashem, to get to know Hashem in a very authentic and open way, not with chagim, not with putting on a show and setting up, just being in our day-to-day life, re-entering, because we said throughout the year we get so distracted and busy with life, like every marriage. And Hashem says, and now, of course we love each other, but even a couple who loves each other so much, life gets so busy and there's so many distractions in the day-to-day life that comes Elul, and Hashem's like, I want to have a month to just get to know each other in preparation for our anniversary. And our anniversary is now, Rosh Hashana, it's the anniversary of us committing to Hashem the first time. And so, Kabbalistically, we learned that on the night of Rosh Hashana is Hashem's big proposal. So we were dating for a month. Hashem is a fast dater. He likes to make decisions right away. Every year, on the night of Rosh Hashana, Hashem proposes to us and asks us, will you accept me again to be our king? And it's a real proposal, so much so that Kabbalah says, that in many sources in Kabbalah, the Zohar and the Rizal, specifically the Pri Eitz Chaim and Chassidut, that in this moment where Hashem says, will you accept me as your king? Will you re-enter in this relationship with me? Because being in a relationship with Hashem is intense. It means Hashem is like a demanding spouse. He wants 613 specific demands. It means accepting Hashem in every area of my life, that I'm going to turn to Hashem with whatever I need. That I'm going to trust Hashem as my beloved spouse, that I will turn to Him in every single one of my falls and needs of my life, that I will bring Him and think of Him in every moment of my life. So Hashem wants us all 100%. And it's a real question, and it takes a lot of thought. And Hashem asks us this, and what do we tell Hashem? We're going to sleep on it. I can't answer you right now. This is huge. I need overnight. Give me a night to sleep on it. And in that night, Kabbalah says that in this interim, this entire night, from when Hashem proposes to us and asks us, there is something spiritually called a Nesira, which means that the entire cosmos hangs in balance, waiting for our answer and waiting to see if we will accept Hashem's proposal. And this Nesira dates all the way back. The first Nesira that happens in Kabbalah explains that the very first Nesira means a removal of light. So first of all, I imagine it as an inhale. Like when a man proposes to his beloved, that he's just dreaming of her saying yes. Imagine like there's that gap, and he asks her, will you marry me? Will you give me your entire life, dedicate your life to me? And imagine she pauses. What's that man doing for that long pause, however long it is? He's holding his breath. He's not breathing. He can't sleep. And if she says, I have to wait till tomorrow morning, you bet he's not sleeping the whole night. He's not sleeping comfortably. He's just waiting, holds it, bating breath. And that's what happens with the entire world during that time. So there's an inhale, and Kabbalistically we learn that's happening during that time is that inhale is Hashem removing. An inhale is inhaling the breath. That the way that Hashem breathes light into this world is through His breath. So all of the breath and the energy Hashem gave us to this previous world is now inhaled and returned back. And so there's very little, so it's returned back because now Hashem is getting ready to breathe. That's going to be the next thing we're going to discuss, a new energy into this new year. Every year comes a completely new breath, a new energy. So there's this inhale of the cosmos, which is spiritually, Kabbalistically, is called the Nesira. All of the energy returns to its source, and everyone's just waiting to see what we're going to answer. The origin of this Nesira starts with Adam and Chava again. Adam and Chava, we learn, were created as an androgynous human being with a masculine in the front, feminine in the back. And there was no opportunity for true unity because they weren't able to connect and unite when they were one. And so Hashem had to separate them in order. And there's so much depth to that, and that's the Taras Mishpacha Shir, where the third class is happening soon. But that's where we focus on that. But on the masculine, on the relationship between man and woman, here we're going to focus our relationship with Hashem. But the separation was so painful, although it was for the purpose of reuniting, because Adam needed someone to connect with, but he couldn't if it was a part of him, if he was in the back of him. So because it was such a painful concept of separation, Kabbalistically it's separating the masculine and the feminine, which is the which is the Za is the six masculine midos, which are the Vav of Hashem's name, and Hey, which is Malchus, which is the feminine. And to separate those, that was a spiritual separation that was happening, Za and Malchus. And in man, Hashem was actually having to separate them. And what did Hashem have to do in order to make the separation? Because it was so painful, Hashem put Adam to sleep. So it says Hashem put a spiritual sleep on him, and through this spiritual sleep, it was less painful. And then he took Chava from man, and then they were able to now have another to now reunite back to our original source. And this is so beautiful because we're not meeting when man and woman reunite. We're returning to what we originally were, but in a much deeper, greater unity, because now we can actually complete one another and have the ultimate godliness or divinity of a human being can be, which is to procreate. So, anyways, this idea of the sleep. So the sleep and the void is necessary before this reunification can happen, before any reunification. So that's what happened. That was the original Nesira, where Hashem put Adam to sleep, and that was called the sleep that Hashem put Adam in. Kabbalistically, is called the Dormita, which means the godly or divine sleep. An element of this sleep, this happened on a Friday, on the first Friday of creation. There's a small element of this that happens in a small way every single Friday. It repeats itself, where there's a level of divine sleep. And there were Hasidim, like spiritual Hasidic tzaddikim that would go to sleep on Erev Shabbos to ascend to this idea of spiritual sleep, because that's where the neshama draws energy from a high level of spirituality in order to come back with reunification before Shabbos. So that was just on a Friday. But this happens in the biggest way every year on the anniversary of when this happened, this original Nesira division of Za, the separation between the Za, which is like the energy flow into this world, and Malchus, which is receiving the flow, our world. So Malchus is literally accepting Hashem as our king. It's the connection between us and Hashem, and us crowning Hashem our king, and the flow of energy had this original separation above, which physically manifested as Adam and Chava separating. This repeats itself every year on Rosh Hashana with Hashem's proposal to us and says, again, do you want to accept me as king? And during that time, there's this leap above. So much so that many Hasidic, many Kabbalists physically felt so weak on the night of Rosh Hashana, because they felt that weakening of Hashem's energy, that inhale of the energy from the previous year, the Nesira. They felt that separation so much that they physically felt weak. They couldn't even walk on the night of Rosh Hashana because they were in touch with the energy of the world. So it was hard for them to walk. Probably me and you could walk because we can get our energy not only from Kedusha, from other places as well. From Tzimtzumim and Klipa. We need more coffee, more tea.
Do we switch or are we done?
We keep switching until you get your paper back?
There's still room? Alright.
But the first night, so you're saying they felt tired and weak?
Because until the morning.
The
yeah,
shofar blowing.
Exactly. So now, how do we answer Hashem's proposal? We have the whole night to...
When was the removal? The whole year?
No, the removal is only the night from when Hashem proposes on the night of Rosh Hashana until we accept the proposal on when we blow the shofar, with the exception. We'll see in a minute.
Show the blow for the next day.
Yeah.
Though,
Not the next year. So this removal, this Nesira, the Hashem's proposal to us happened on the night of Rosh Hashana, and we spend that night, or really the whole Elul, thinking about if we want to remarry Hashem, what it means to say yes to Hashem's proposal, to be intentional about what it means to commit, for me to commit to a relationship with Hashem. And that's what I suggest, that as a practical thing, that we now take the time to think, what does it mean for me to be in a relationship with Hashem, right? What does it mean to have a connection with Hashem? What does it mean for me to accept Hashem as my king, to recommit to this relationship with Hashem? And when we think about that, then when we come and blow the shofar, that is our answer to Hashem. When thousands of Jews every year, despite having been through ups and downs of this year and a lot of pain, when we say, despite it all, like a marriage, that despite being through ups and downs and hardships, we recommit to this relationship every single year, no matter what. We're going to stick through the thick and through the highs and the lows. We come and we want our yes, we come to Rosh Hashana in the morning and we blow the shofar, and that is us shouting, yes, 1,000 times, yes, I accept your proposal. I want to be with you. I want to recommit with you. I want it through the highs and the lows. I want you in my life. I want you as my king. And my king means that you're involved, not just one of the questions of Rosh Hashana that's asked specifically dates all the way back to the Tfilas Chana, which was historically said on Rosh Hashana. So that's what the Haftorah that we read in Rosh Hashana is the story of Chana asking for a son. And when Eli asked her, why are you drunk? He meant, why in Rosh Hashana, in front of the Aron Kodesh, of the Mishkan, are you asking for such a physical thing? Rosh Hashanah is a time to be spiritual. And you're asking for a son. do this another time. Rosh Hashanah is all about being, accepting Hashem as our king. And we learned that from Hannah and her answer that we don't want Hashem in our king in a spiritual and abstract way. What it really means to have Hashem as our king means to have a relationship with Hashem where he is involved in specifically in every physical, day-to-day, mundane thing in our life, not just in the spiritual moments when we go to shul and we have those opportunities to daven. Hashem being our king means specifically and that's why throughout the tefillah of Rosh Hashana, we see there's so many requests for physical things in our life. And that's one of the questions that Chamim asked, like, it's such a spiritual day, why we shouldn't ask, even on Shabbos we don't ask, we skip out the parts of asking for physical things. But Rosh Hashana, when we want Hashem as our king, I want to be in a relationship with you and Hashem, not just in the high moments on Shabbos and in shul. I want to be in it with you in the hardest moments of my life, when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm taking a walk, when I'm having a coffee. I want you to be there and present in every moment of my life. That's what a real relationship with Hashem means, and that's what it means to crown Hashem as our king in every area of our lives. So the entire cosmos and creation are suspended, it says, waiting for our answer, because if we don't say yes, if we don't come to shul and blow the shofar and accept Hashem's proposal, there is no point. They have no purpose in creation, because Hashem made man last, because it says it was like a house ready for, like the world was ready for us to enter. They were just the conduits for us to fulfill our mission in this world, everything else. So if we don't accept our mission to have a relationship with Hashem and to be in this with Hashem, they have no purpose in existing, and the world doesn't exist again. And so once, what happens spiritually is that after we accept Hashem's proposal, when we come to shul, and it doesn't mean that if a Jew doesn't come to shul and hear the shofar that he doesn't have a relationship with Hashem, and some we do it for him. We're a one nation. Rosh Hashana represents this beautiful idea of Achdus. In this parsha, actually, in Nitzavim, it says Atam Nitzavim Hayom, which is a reference, Rashi says, to Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masechet Rosh Hashana, Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem. We're one nation. So even if one part of you is not necessarily active right here physically, if your foot is sleeping, it's still here and receiving. So even if one part of the Jewish nation doesn't come to shul, we all comprise one unit. We're Kol Ma'achas. So Rosh Hashana is the idea of unity, that every single Jew is present in some way or the other. The heads, Rosh Hashanah, the heads of the Jewish people, and even the toenails, the parts of the Jews that maybe are not connected, they are there because we're all one and we're all connected. And just like there's mitzvahs for men and women, that the reason that women don't keep mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs, and there's mitzvahs that we do, like mikvah, that men don't do, is because we are one unit. And therefore, when my husband does a mitzvah, it's literally as if I did it, even before we are married. Our neshamas were one, and that's the idea that we were one before. So the reason you don't have to do tefillin even before you're married is that your other half of your soul is doing it for you, and it's literally as if you did it yourself. When I go to the mikvah, it's our mitzvah. We're doing it. He's doing it as well. He's getting that same spiritual elevation. So we are one unit, all of Am Yisrael as well, and therefore all of us get this connection. We are like the representatives of the rest of the Kol Ma'achas of the Am Yisrael.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and we are doing the mitzvahs for those people who are in captivity, and hopefully they'll be Bezrat Hashem out before Rosh Hashana. For those who are not able to, for whatever reason, spiritual blockings, trauma that they've been through, they're fighting a war, they're fighting their own personal wars, whatever reason that they can't do it, we're doing it for them.
Is that so, like, if a husband isn't doing tefillin?
Oh, that's a great question. Should a woman do
I
it?
mean, think on mine is, but
A father could
I'm
also
just
be.
wondering if what happens if,
I don't know. That's actually a really good
that's
question.
Like another whole
That's a-
class.
That's a really good question. That's really interesting. Well, there's an element of like we'll talk. That's teshuvah. So at this moment, after we accept Hashem's proposal, we come to shul, we blow the shofar. That is us crowning Hashem as our king, literally. But on this metaphor of love, we're accepting Hashem's proposal. And in that moment, from the moment we blow the shofar, Hashem then exhales. The exhale finally, he's holding his breath, exhales the new energy for the new year into this world and breathes it in. And then we're renewed with this brand new energy and opportunity to rewrite an entire new year of Ischatros. And that leads me to my second favorite thought I'm going to share with you 4 of my favorite thoughts in the world, or 5, on Rosh Hashana. My second favorite thought is the idea of Ischatros.
Of what?
Hischatshut, which means renewal. My throat is really going today.
Drink.
Right. The Zohar tells us that every year in Tishrei, we receive this new energy that Hashem breathes into this world with a new opportunity to recreate ourselves and receive infinite abundance from Hashem. And Tishrei is literally a gate to a higher dimension. It's this gate where we can open up and recreate and design our lives from beginning once more in the biggest way possible. We have the opportunity now to re-decide with this brand new, fresh energy. And so it's really one of the most important months of the year, and that's why there's so many opportunities to like focus and be intentional and connect and really design the year that we want. So this takes me back to Ischatros. I may have shared this before, but when I go, the idea of sleeping, we'll speak about Ischachos is a gift Hashem gave us. Renewal is this beautiful gift because if you think about sleeping, we spend a third of our lives or more, hopefully, or at least a third of our lives sleeping, which seems like such a waste of time. We have so little time on this earth. Why are we wasting a third of it doing nothing? And when I think about it, it's this magical gift Hashem gave us because if not for sleep, if I'm having a bad day, which I've shared that I've had today and many days, imagine that day never ended. It would just go on forever. And so sleep, the opportunity to sleep and then wake up and have a brand new day of Ischachos, of renewal, allows me to say yesterday was bad, but today could be new. And then we have these pockets of renewal that God gave us as His gift in bigger areas in every week. So even if I had a whole bad week and my week did not go well and I was not the best person I could be or I didn't have a good week, after Shabbos, after this Nesira, between every renewal, before every renewal comes a Nesira, which means a void or a sleeping or a bittul, like Tevila, like we said before you go in the mikvah class, we learned before going to the mikvah, before this renewal of your new renewing your relationship, you have this bittul, this going into a void, which is what bittul and Tevila is all about. So sleeping is definitely bittul because it's 1/60th death, and it's like just losing, like surrender. Before every week we have Shabbos to go into this space of just introspection, not working, not producing, but we're renewing and introspection. Before this, we want to decide what kind of energy we want for this new week. Then we have it in a bigger day in a month, right? Every month we actually learn Kabbalistically that Hashem completely shifts the letters of His name. The letters of Hashem's name, Yod Heh Vav and Hey, can be rearranged in 12 ways. And in every month there is a new, it's rearranged on Rosh Chodesh. Hashem rearranges those names, and through that we learn that the letters are how Hashem sends His energy to this world, to us. So whether Yud and Vav we learn are top down, are revelation, and Hey are more concealment or receiving letters, whatever it means, I don't know, very Kabbalistic, but there's a totally new flow of energy in every month, and we can hop on that, and that's the new, like it's such a gift. Every month we could say, this month, what are my goals going to be? How am I going to be better? How am I going to put aside and just drop into the void and all the baggage from last year and jump into this new energy of this new month? And then the biggest way it happens is Rosh Hashana. We have this full opportunity, this blank page where Hashem literally removes and sucks in and inhales and puts into the past any energy that you want to leave behind from the last year is literally being sucked into Hashem's inhale, and a total or chadash, we learned in Kabbalah, a brand new light is coming into this world, and we can recreate this light. And I really bless us that this year we have this achdos, and from our togetherness, we learned that a little bit on the Parsha, Atam nitzavim hayom kulchem, Mashechem shivtechem. We learned that the word nitzavim means standing, but the usual word for standing is what?
Omed.
Omdim. Wow, look at you. Olah, new Olah. Omed means to stand. Nitzavim is a different type of standing. Nitzavim means standing in victory. So we learn in Chassidut that Atem Nitzavim Hayom means that today, we said it's an illusion, the day, Hayom is Rosh Hashana, Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha. On Rosh Hashana today, Nitzavim, we're not just standing, we're standing in victory. We know that we have been victorious for a good year. And why? Why should we be victorious for a year? Because of the next word, which is Kulchem. Because you are standing from every part of the Jewish nation, right, left wing, whatever you come from, religious, not religious, whether you live wherever you live, whatever background you have, if you can stand together as one unit, Hashem has no choice but to bless us with a victorious year, with a year of revealed good. And so our zchus, our merit for victory is when we're kulchem, when we remember that the most important thing that sways Hashem, it's like if all of our kids come together and decide together, we want this, and they're all in unity, it is almost impossible to say no to them, right? If they ask for something together, they made a plan, and they're all being kind to each other and planning something together, and they work together to build something, it's like, of course, like how do I say no to that? And so when Hashem has millions of children and we all come together and unity and ask Hashem for a good year, Hashem has no choice but to say, of course, you will be nitzach and you will be nitzavim in victory. That's just a little allusion to the Parsha.
It's beautiful.
I don't even know how I got to that. Hischachos. The Parsha Hischachos. Okay, so that is the idea of being able to have this beautiful gift of blessing, of asking Hashem to give us this year in merit of our achdus and togetherness that we've seen this year after the tragedy that happened last year, and the merit of all that achdus that we will merit to have a year of completely new energy. Hashem will completely remove the energy from last year of pain and suffering, and bring us an energy of geula, of revelation, of unity, and of only revealed good. Brachais for each, as a nation, for the hostages, and for the Am Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael, and for every individual who is suffering with their own sorrows. Hashem could completely reverse that energy and give a brand new chischachos of brachos for this year.
Amen.
So I guess the lesson is the idea of this. What we could the takeaway from this idea, this concept of chischachos, is to use these opportunities, because Hashem gives them to us, but if we could really get the most from them if we make sure to ask ourselves now, how do I want to redesign this year? What do I want to breathe into my new year? What do I want to inhale and put in the past and let go of? And what do I want to renew into this year? And that leads me to a thought that I heard this year for the first time. I love to have new thoughts about the Lamed. Lamed is how Sefer Yetzirah says Hashem formed this month of Tishrei through the letter Lamed. Hashem sends us energy. Now, the letter Lamed, we learn, is the tallest of all the letters. It's the only of the letters of the alphabet that extends above the line of all the letters. There's a whole other class about the Lev and the Lamed. You might recognize it from there. So on the one hand, Lamed is us aspiring. It's our level of aspiration to aspire to the highest heights we can get to. And that's great, because it's our neshama yearning to be close to Hashem, to transcend the body, to cleave to Hashem's oneness, to be better than ourselves. The downside of that sometimes is when we look back at this year, one of the ideas of Tishrei is making achatos tovos. It's deciding how I'm going to be better this year. So every year on Tishrei, Ella, we hopefully take on all these achatos, we make all these decisions. I'm going to be a better mom. I'm not going to scream at my kids. I'm going to be the best wife. I'm going to be positive. All these great ideas. And then comes Tishrei Elul, and you're like, wait a minute, I had all these achatos last year, and what happened to them? I did not succeed, probably, because I'm human and it's human to err. I probably didn't meet up to all my achlatos. So like, who am I kidding again, taking on all these new achlatos? And that's the error of the lamed. That the downside is that we have within us this lamed, this neshama that always wants to be better and climb to higher heights, and we take on all these great achlatos, and then we feel like a failure. And what do we do about all those failures? How do we relate and deal with all of those times that we didn't do our achlatos, which is inevitable. Of course, we're not going to keep our achlatos because we achieve higher than we're capable of, which is normal and good.
Wait, you achieve higher than you're capable
you
of?
aspire for higher than you're
okay.
actually always going to keep, which is good. You always want to keep your aspirations higher than you might achieve. You want to have high aspirations, right? You say reach for the moon and hopefully you'll reach one of the stars, or reach for the stars and you'll reach the moon. I don't know. This moon, I don't know which is closer. What do we do about this? That's what Kol Nidre is spiritually. I love this concept. It literally one of my favorite new ideas. Kol Nidre on a practical level is annulling the first tefillah on Yom Kippur, right? It's called Rosh Hashana, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, right?
Yom Kippur.
It's annulling all the vows from the previous year, so that you don't, you're not chayav for if you made a vow and you didn't, it's a nevera to transgress the vow. You're on a spiritual level. So on a practical level, any negative vow you made, of course you want to annul those vows. But you're also annulling any spiritual vow that you made, any spiritual neder, any achlata that you made spiritually, you're annulling that. And I'm like, that's not good. You don't want to take away a spiritual achlata tova you made. You should keep those resolutions from last year. Why would you ditch those and just to make new ones? And to me, that was such a profound lesson, because one of the best things I learned, I think through my ADHD coach, or I don't know, from my own research in ADHD, was about to-do lists. Was one of the best tools in to-do lists is deleting things from your to-do list that you didn't do. And it's one of the biggest tools for me to be more productive, is not to have more things on my to-do list, but on a daily basis, I go through my to-do list, that's from here to tomorrow, and what happens when I have all these aspirations that I'm not keeping is that I get so overwhelmed, and I just freak out and do nothing, and then like escape to doing something else like that is not on my to-do list. Usually it's like doom scrolling through social media, because I'm so overwhelmed with all these things. I'm like, I can't do anything. It's debilitating to have so many goals that are unattainable. So I love to go through my to-do list and just cross things out that I know I'm not going to do. This is not within my realm right now. I'm not going to do them, and I cross them out. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to do them. It just means they're not on my to-do list. So it doesn't mean that we don't have those aspirations. It just means they're not written down as a neder, as a vow that I told myself to make me feel incapable, to make me feel overwhelmed, and it's debilitating. And when I cross off, I have things on my to-do list from last Tishrei. Literally, I have from last Tishrei to follow up on the kids program and things, to post picturs from last summer camp. And it holds me back because it just overwhelms me and doesn't allow me to move forward into new achlatos that are within my reach. So deleting things, unavowing yourself from the neder of past things, actually allows you to open up into what you are capable of, into leaning into what I am able to do. So to erase your entire to-do list, if you don't think you're going to do it, if you think, am I actually going to do this? If the answer is no, take it off your to-do list so that it doesn't hold you back. And that's what the Kol Nidre is, removing the vows from last year, all the vows, all the spiritual chatot we made on ourselves, and then coming into this year with more realistic ones I'll actually do. And the Rebbe was famous for saying, when you make achlata tova, let's say I'm going to be the best mom, I'm going to spend a half hour with each of my kids every day, right? He says, take that achlata and cut it in half, and then cut it in half again. So make it 5 minutes a day, and then make it once a week, each child 10 minutes, cut in half until And a therapy tool that I heard once that was amazing was your body knows whether or not it's something that you're going to do. Because the secret spot in growth is that we always want to expand our comfort zone. We don't want to be comfortable and do the same thing. We always want to push ourselves to grow. But the growth has to be enough that it's not going to be too much that we break and we don't actually do it. So you want to push yourself to a level that you will end up doing it. And so the sweet spot, or the way that you can ask your body, is say to myself, I'm going to spend 30 minutes with my child every day. How does my body react to that? Does my body like tighten up and like I'm holding my breath and I'm tensing inside? Or am I like breathing out and leaning into that? I can do that. Ask your body, do I feel like I can lean into it and that's something I can do? Or am I moving away from that, like my body's actually moving back? Until you get to that, make that halata smaller and smaller, increments, bite size. It might even be for one day, I'm gonna try to put my phone away from 4 to 7. I tried that, did not work. Okay, I'm gonna put my phone away from 5 to 7. I'm gonna have my phone on silent until you get to the point where you could do that halata, so I could be with my kids, and then it's attainable. And then once, that's when you grow your comfort zone. Then you get to that spot that's doable, you put a reminder on your phone, and you make that halata, and then when you reach that level of comfort, then you add in that halata and you increase. And that's the beautiful way, the actual practical way of doing halata. So I love this idea of kol nidre, of like, that the lamed teaches us, and that's where we get to the Libra, by the way. So the Libra, the sign of Libra, I'm a Libra. My English birthday was yesterday. So if you're a Libra, if your birthday is from September 22nd to October 22nd, or the Hebrew month of Tishrei. And the Libra is the sign of the scale, which is balance. So it's all about balance. And that's one of the aspirations of all of us during this month, not just a Libra, all Jewish people during this month, all humans in this month, were tapping into this avoda of achieving balance in our life. We have this part of us that wants to soar and achieve higher, and then we have the part of us that also wants to be grounded and realistic and think, what am I actually capable of? And balancing those two is one of the avodas of Tishrei, of the scales. So that's where the lamed is amazing, because it soars high, but also draws down, and the lamed represents balance as well. Kabbalistically, the lamed crosses through the left, right, and middle channels of the tree of life, which is balance, and also malchios, zichronos, and shofros represent the right malchios, zichronos, which is din, judgment, left, and shofros, which is the blending of the two. Ignore that if you didn't connect to it or understand it. It's okay.
It's a whole lesson.
Yeah.
Whole nother Kabbalistic idea. It's okay. Could Okay, so that was my new, beautiful idea of and that's like, I guess, the idea of Nesira as well. That sometimes Nesira, which means moving backwards, like the Nesira is Hashem removing his light, or the Nesira of going backwards, introspecting, removing a level, is not for the purpose, the whole point of the Nesira of Adam and Chava was not for the purpose of separation. It was separation for the purpose of uniting in a much, much deeper way that wasn't possible when they were completely one. And that really is the theme of this entire class. It's going to go through what the deepest idea of the shofar blows are as well, at the end of the class soon. But the as well, when Hashem removes his light from us, it's not to separate from us, God forbid. Hashem removing and exhaling or inhaling and suspending his light and energy is only for the purpose of coming back with a much stronger unity that's only possible from that void, from that separation, and with Nida as well. The separation between a husband and wife every month is not for the point of being distant. It's only for the purpose of having a level of physical distance so that our reunification is much more strong, much more intimate, much more deep when you can, in that space of that void. We're not supposed to just ignore each other, just like in that void with Hashem and in the sea. What are we supposed to do in the void between, in our Taras Mishpacha class? I'll link it in here so you can listen to it. We're supposed to work on, getting to really think about a relationship and connect in much deeper ways than we can physically, and reconnect as best friends and think about what we want coming into this newness, into this new cycle that we're going to have with our beloved. And so that's what this Nasira, or this separation of our vows, removing our vows, going lower, is not for the sake of being lower, it's for the purpose of being more productive, of deleting things in order to be even more productive moving forward. I love that, like literally deleting things from my to-do list, and then either not bringing it back in ever, because I didn't do it and it's enough. Why should it be in my to-do list and make me feel bad? And feeling bad just holds me back. Or rewriting, if it's something I need to do and I can't ignore, I rewrite it as the first step I need to do. So instead of saying like, plan Rosh Hashana, it's like, make a menu or read my notes from last year, or whatever it is, the first step, and the tiny, tiny bite-sized step until I get to a step that I'm actually able to do. Talk about it with someone else, whatever that first step I need to do to get to it is. So that was my practical takeaway. There's so much more I really needed to share today.
It's a separate.
Okay, so we spoke about, that was the idea of Malchios, the first element of crowning Hashem as our king. I'm going to touch very, very briefly on Zichronos. Zichronos is remembrance. And I mentioned in the Elul Shir a little bit that when I was a child, and even as an adult, and I thought about Hashem, what does Zichronos mean? Hashem remembers all my deeds this year. And there's a big scale, and Hashem puts all my good deeds on one side and my bad deeds on the other side. And then whatever is stronger, if my bad deeds are greater, I have a bad year. And if my good deeds are greater, I have a good year. Okay, now, I'm not saying that's not true. There's obviously truth to that. But, and you actually look at the source in the Gemara that I read to you in the beginning about what Zichronos is, we always imagine Hashem like remembering all the Averos you did all year. And now on Rosh Hashana, Hashem's going to remember all of them. On Yom Kippur, He's going to put on the scale. And then if you did bad things, you're going to remember, so you better do Teshuvah. Now, that is such a juvenile approach to Tishrei. It's like imagining, and I said like a relationship where like your spouse is writing down all year. Imagine all year your spouse, or you write down all the bad things your spouse did. And then comes the anniversary and you're like, here, I'm going to read to you all the bad things you did all year. That's a messed up relationship. Neat, go to a therapist right away. So if Hashem is our beloved, I can promise you Hashem is not writing down our bad things so you could come on anniversary and be like, you sit down, I'm going to remind you all the bad things you did this year, all the times you were not a good spouse to me. Of course not. In fact, it is proven in the actual source of the word Zichronos, which is where the whole idea of Hashem remembering all our deeds comes from, literally blows your mind. I always thought the source was Chasidu. No, it's the Gemara. Rosh Hashana, can I take this from you? Sure. We said, Malchios Kadesh Tamnichun Elechem Zichronos. Read this out loud, guys. Kadesh Yavo. I want you to read this. Lefanai Zichronechem, so that I will your remembrances will rise before me. What's the next word? Letova. Say this 1,000,000 times if you have to. Letova. Hashem, of course, is remembering only the good moments. The good moments. Now, I'm not saying we don't remember the bad moments, but I always used to be annoyed with anniversary posts with social media. I used to tell my husband, I want to make an anniversary post, but I want to be able to post the good and the bad. Why don't we have any pictures of when we had a fight, when we weren't talking, when we slept in another room? You know, like all the bad moments, because it's so fake. I don't want to make a fake relationship. I don't want to post online all the times we're like happy together, because there's also bad moments. And then it creates this false reality, false ideal. And when I really thought about it more, I realized that it's not necessary that we're being fake. It's that you don't want to remember all the bad moments. I don't want to take a picture in those times because I don't want to remember those moments, because just like my anniversary comes, I'm not going to hopefully read my diary of all the times I was mad at you. I'm going to hopefully acknowledge those times. I'm going to acknowledge and say, we've been through hard times together. I will always write in my posts. We have been, my husband and I. Of course, there's been ups and downs and a lot of lows where we didn't even know if we would make it, but we made it through. But those are not the highlights that I'm highlighting, that I'm putting my pictures on, that I'm remembering and marking down in history, in my scrapbook, in my highlight reel. And that's why the healthiest approach to social media is, in my opinion, is before you open up social media, remembering that the same way you document and take pictures of all the best moments of your family vacation, you're not taking pictures of all the tantrums and the kids screaming or throwing up in the car, not because they didn't happen, but because that's not what you want to focus on. We're positive people. Hashem gave us an ayin tova. We want to remember all the good times. It's not that we're being fake, it's that we want to show the highlights of our life. We want to focus on the positive, which is amazing. So before you open up social media, remember that what you're seeing is the highlight reel. It's everyone's highlights of their relationship. Mm-hmm. You don't know what's going on behind. One of my close friends growing up posts, she has the perfect social media. Literally, like she's a model, she has kids, she's a perfect house, husband, kid, they always look stunning. And she posted last year one of the pictures that she looks like this gorgeous model in Starbucks, and I'm sharing this because she posted it for everyone to help people, that during this time she was checked into a hospital for suicidal, for self-harm thoughts. And no one knows that, because that's not usually what you share. So when you're coming to see someone's life on social media, first of all, social media is toxic for a lot of reasons. But if you are looking at social media, because there's also some good that can come from it, like listening to the shiurim of Torah, to remember that, of course, everyone is sharing the highlight reel. And just like you share on your family chat and everywhere the highlight reel and you don't share the lows, that everyone is sharing the highs of their life. We want to celebrate the highs, but also acknowledge that that's not everything. There's also behind the scenes of what it looks like behind there. One time I shared my Rosh Hashana, actually pre-Rosh Hashana, I shared my gorgeous challahs and my table, and then I also shared the back of me, which was that my entire house was a mess. I decided to first at the table, nothing was cleaned or cooked. I just made challahs at the table to put me in the mood, Rosh Hashana, and my house literally looked like a tsunami hit it. And I shared that also. I'm like, by the way, this is the other side. Sometimes it is cute to share so people know the reality. Anyways, all that to share that Yom HaZikaron, Hashem, of course, on Yom HaZikaron, what is Hashem remembering? Hashem is not a spouse that's reading us all our negatives. It's the opposite. How many special things do throughout the year that we forget, that no one remembers and no one saw that we did, and that we probably didn't even notice. Especially as parents, we do so many things that go unnoticed. So many times we push ourselves, we overcome ourselves, we don't yell, we hold ourselves back, we take a deep breath. When we want to scream, we give a hug instead. All of those moments when we pushed ourselves to act kindly to someone who screamed at us in Israel, God, or to be kind to someone who wasn't kind to us. Every one of those moments, you think that no one noticed. Hashem says, I remember, I noticed, I wrote it down, and I'm going to remember all of that today on Rosh Hashana. When I'm coming to remember all of your deeds, I want to know that someone is remembering, someone notices every moment. And sometimes when mitzvahs are really hard for me, and I'm not, like tznius or different things, I tell Hashem, no one, this is really hard for me, and I know that you know, and you better be seeing this. I'm writing this down, giving me a lot of brachas for this, because this is really challenging and really hard. And so having that relationship with Hashem, that Hashem will know the good, and of course will come and say, yes, Hashem, we've been through hard times this year. We're acknowledging that we're remembering all the bad. There was really painful times with Hashem in our relationship, but through it all, we're recommitting to, just like in a difficult relationship, we say, through the good times and the bad times, we're recommitting this year to put our best foot forward, to hopefully have a better year, have more good times than bad times, but to acknowledge that through all the good and bad, we're going to stick through it together. And that's one of my one of my favorite concepts of zichronot, of what it means when you say Hashem remembers you. He's remembering all of the good. And it's like a parent also. Hashem's also our father. As parents, we want to give our kids, we learn kids as much. Let's say we want to take our kids on a trip and we threaten them, like, if you don't get ready, if you start fighting with your, you don't stop fighting your brother, we're not going to go on the trip. We want them to give them as many chances as possible to make up and to earn the trip back, right? We don't want them to miss a trip. We want to take our kids on the positive trips. We want to give them the present we bought them. I bought you a present, but I want you to earn it. So I'm going to give you as many chances and be like, oh yeah, you did the right thing, and give you the present now. We're going to look for every opportunity. And Hashem's the same way. We learned that Hashem has buckets and buckets. It says a pouring chef on brachos that he wants to pour onto us throughout the Chodesh of Tishrei of love. And that's the idea of the physical, bodily sense of this marital, physical bonding with Hashem. Hashem has physical brachos for the new year he wants to give us, but he wants us to have a vessel for it. Hashem wants us to have something to catch those blessings, because all the diamonds in the world can fall on you, but if you don't have a bucket to catch them, what are you going to do? How are you going to take them home? And so Hashem is trying to give us as many zchuyot, remember, as many opportunities for zchuyot, and all these mitzvahs, Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, hearing the shofar, to make as many zchuyot, which are physical vessels, to catch all of the brachos Hashem showers on us throughout Tishrei. And so Hashem is a father who's loving, who's trying to remember and mention any zchut we can think of, so that we can have a merit to fill the blessings he wants to shower us with. Like a parent who just wants to give more and more to their children, but we want them to earn it because we don't want them to be spoiled brats when they grow up. And so
a lot of the Jews really saying to Hashem, like, hey, it doesn't really matter so much what I did this year. Remember Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, like what they did?
Exactly, and that's part two. Okay, part two of Zichronot is that in the tefillot of Zichronot, we're remembering not just our zchuyot, but the zchuyot of the first one of the Kedas Yitzchak. The shofar reminds Hashem, here, physical shofar. The shofar, when we blow it, it reminds Hashem of a lot of things, but it reminds Hashem first of the zchus of Avram, who was ready to sacrifice, to do the ultimate sacrifice for Hashem. Then, when we were accepted the Torah in our first marriage with Hashem, our original wedding, when we blew the shofar, that romantic, beautiful moment where we said Nasa v'nishma, that reminds Hashem, and it evokes in Hashem all those memories. And that's what an anniversary is also. When you go through the pictures, hopefully, or you remember together, you think about all the beautiful moments in your relationship. We try to go through like every anniversary where we were and how we didn't celebrate or celebrated and what we were doing. If we were running camp and order takeout, whatever it was. We try to remember where we were in each year. Remembering all of the beautiful moments allows you to renew that love with so much feeling. And so that's another idea of Zichronot, Hashem remembering all those things. And the way I look at it, and I love this paradigm, is I think of it as Hashem planting love notes throughout history, just like a beloved plants like little love notes that you'll see in different times of your life. I feel like the shofar was Hashem planting this moment between us of like this sacrifice we made. And then at Har Sinai, Hashem again brought the shofar out so that we could see, like, reminds Hashem. It's like someone once told me, it's like the wedding song. Every time you hear that song that you had at your wedding, or the music that you heard together when you fell in love, it reminds you of the love. And that's that shofar. It's like these beautiful reminders of all the love moments in our history with Hashem. So I think of it as a romantic, I feel like Hashem is being so romantic in that, and like blow the shofar, and I want you to blow the shofar, and we'll remember all of those romantic moments throughout history, when we got married, through Kedas Yitzchak, when Yeshua blew the shofar and the walls came down. One of the reasons that the Kala circles her husband 7 times is because when Yeshua wanted to bring down the walls of Yericho, they circled the wall 7 times and then blew the shofar, and then the walls came down. And between a husband and wife, we want that there's no walls left between them. There's nothing separating them. And so she walks around her husband 7 times to embody the idea of removing all of the walls, any last walls or space, gaps that might be blocking them from uniting as one. And so the shofar also is that blast that brings the walls down, anything that might be separating us and that we want to put back in the last year to reconnect with Hashem as one. And so that's that romantic, beautiful, evoking love song of Hashem throughout history. And then every Chag, Hashem has had, many of the Chagim, we blew the shofar. In the Beit HaMikdash, one of the ways that they served Hashem was by blowing the shofar again as this romantic gesture of Hashem. And I'm going to end off now. So that was Zichronos. So we did Machios, crowning Hashem as our king, accepting the proposal, renewing our love, and now renewing our vows with Hashem. Zichronot, Hashem remembering all the good times that we may have forgotten in our relationship with Him, remembering all of the romantic moments throughout history, and recalling only as much as possible the highlights of our relationship with Hashem. And now shofars. The Gemara says that the first two are accomplished through the shofar. All of three of them are accomplished through the shofar. So we crown Hashem as our king because that's how kings were crowned, and Jewish kings were all crowned through blowing the shofar, and that's how we accept the proposal of Hashem, by blowing the shofar. The second part, Zichronos, we remember all these things through the shofar. And then we have the third element of shofar itself, which has depth in and of itself. And the main idea of shofar is that it comes from the part of our soul that's beyond words. It's us calling out to Hashem from a cry that emits from the depths of our neshama, and it's our connection to Hashem that we just connect from the deepest part of our soul. A cry is when I have no words, I'm just crying from the depths of my soul. And a cry is a cry of teshuvah, which means reuniting, tashuv hey, reuniting to our primal connection, to our neshama, to reconnecting with Hashem. It's an expression of the depths of our neshama. From the words of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there are things that are so important to us that the words flow out in a burst of emotion, rich words, expressive and vibrant. And then there are things that shake us to the core, things that do not care for the mind's permission or for the right words, for the mind cannot fathom them. The most poignant words cannot contain these feelings. Things that can only break out in a cry, in a scream, and then in silence. This is the sound of the shofar, the very core of our neshama crying, Father, Father. That's what the Rebbe describes the sound of the shofar. It is us just cleaving to Hashem from the depths of our neshama. But then we get even deeper, and we go into the actual sounds of the shofar are not just random. The actual sounds of the shofar are threefold. There's the tekiah. That's tekiah, one long cry. Then the next sound is shavarim, which that's like the long cry. The shavarim is the broken cry. Shevar means actually a break. I actually learned this week that shevar means contractions in math. You're a math student, right? Shvarim. My son's like, I'm learning shvarim. I'm like, oh, learning how to blow a shofar. He's like, no, I'm learning fractions in math. So it means fractions, fractured, to be fractured, really. I mean, shvarim means to be fractured. That's shvarim. And then the third blast is the teruah, which is, I actually don't know the source of the root teruah. I know what it sounds like, but anyone know where the root?
Is from something you do like when you're on a victory.
Wow, that's so interesting. Wow. It also, I think of it as roa, bad, but it's also a victorious. Tuat nitzachon. I'll try my. And then we have the last tekiah, which is the tekiah gedola. So we have the tekiah, the teruah, the tekiah shvarim teruah, and then we have the tekiah gedola at the end. Also, I'll say that for later when I speak about the tekiah gedola, because I don't have a voice today.
Do you know what Sfardim do?
No, what does Sfardim do?
Shura gedola. It's a
Really?
lot more than 9 blasts.
That's so interesting.
Shura gedola. It's a very long.
So I heard
More than 9.
years ago, I heard one of my favorite teachings, probably not just Rosh Hashana, but in the world, on this idea of the deeper meaning of these 3 shofars. So they represent 3 different cries, because the shofar is the cry of our soul, calling out from the depths of our souls. And there's different types of cries. And so the first tekiah represents, and I think this message is relevant this year more than any other year, because we are in an era where we faced one of the most painful years since I was born in Am Yisrael. And so I think this resonates very deeply. So the tekiah, shvarim, teruah, tekiah represent in our soul different stages of our lives. The tekiah, that long, pure blast, represents the wholeness of our neshama before she comes into this world. Our neshama is one with Hashem. It's pure. Everything is great and perfect. It's a long, uninterrupted cry of just crying out in love, right? Yes, 1,000 times yes. Then, as the neshama comes down into this world, she is fractured. even from childhood, when things don't start going your way, from the first baby cry, right? Like, wow, I want my milk right now. And when little children, things don't go their way, into teenagehood, when there's frustrations and there's this gap in life, which is where just things are frustrating and don't go our way. And that's represented by the shvarim, where we ultimately start to face breaks in life, where things are not meant to go perfectly, because we're not in a perfect world, in a world of galut, a world of tikkun. And that's the shvarim. And then, inevitably, throughout life, we have something that completely shatters us and breaks us to our core. Those moments, like I said, where we just don't want to wake up, where we just feel like life has broken us completely, where it's like the sound of the trua is like the shattered cries, like sobbing, where you can't catch your breath, where it's just like, where you can't even breathe, when you're crying from the depths of your soul, where you're broken hearted, when your heart is completely shattered. And throughout life, as an as a nation, we face these moments, and individually as well. We reach a point in our lives where we face this challenge and struggle from within or from without that completely shatters us and breaks us, and we feel like it just can't get better. And that's the trua. And that's what that's what I meditate on and picture when I'm listening to these sounds during in shul. And then comes this deep, deep truth that the last tkiya is the tkiya gedola. And we learn that although throughout life we go through the wholeness, we start whole, perfect, nothing's breaking us, and then we start to break a little bit and deal with small challenges in life, and then probably throughout our lives we've been shattered completely, and when we feel broken. And after that comes the tkiya gedola, and the tkiya gedola halachically has to be longer. The other ones have to be the same length. The trua, tkiya, shvarim, and trua have to be the same length, and the tkiya gedola has to be much longer than all of them for it to be a kosher hearing of the shofar. And the reason for that is that we learn one of the deepest messages of life, that it's not through that the wholeness that we had originally when we came out into this world, where we weren't challenged, or the wholeness in our life when things felt perfect, is not a real wholeness. It's the wholeness of Adam and Chava before they were split, before the Nesira. It's not a true wholeness, because it's a wholeness that doesn't have any challenges, any growth. It's like two people who never had an argument, so they think that everything's perfect in their marriage. It's like we have the perfect relationship, but we never had an argument. And the minute of an argument, that's it, we're over. It's a relationship that's feeble and hasn't been tested and tried. And the wholeness that comes after we've gone through challenges, the wholeness that we pull out of our neshama, the greatness and the depth of growth and connection and that comes only after we've been broken, only after we've pulled out of ourselves failures and disappointments in life and brokenness, and then come to a level of piecing those pieces back together. Then comes the tkiya gedola. After that, when we can grow from those moments, when we learn from those broken moments in our life, the deep messages Hashem is trying to tell us, the growth, the compassion, the empathy, and whatever emunah and trust and faith we had to pull out of our kishkas, out of our soul to overcome that challenge, the wholeness that we experience after that brokenness is a tkiya gedola. It's a much greater wholeness than the wholeness that we had before we were broken. And so the title of this essay that I heard from Rabbi Ywa Jacobson, he calls it Whole, Broken, and then Whole. But it's really whole, broken, and then much wholer, real wholeness that comes after being broken. And it's in the words of the Kotzker Rebbe from a different idea. He says that there's nothing as whole as a broken heart. A heart that is full and complete. There's no breaks in life. There's no room for love. There's no room for light. There's no room to receive light and connect with other people. Someone who feels complete and perfect and doesn't need anything, doesn't need anyone. I don't need connection. I don't need you. I don't need anything. And he says there's nothing as broken as a whole heart. When someone feels like, I am good, Aniva Atzmi, I'm fine myself, I don't need anyone else, I'm good. And so that brokenness, that all goes all the way back to this original idea of the Nesira, the separation, that fracture between Adam and Chava was for the purpose of a wholeness that can come, a much deeper wholeness that can only come after there's a break. That wholeness of rejuvenation that can only come after we fail. And that's really what Teshuvah is all about. Of course we messed up. Adam messed up on his first day of being a perfect man that God created with his own hands and breathed his life into. Of course we're gonna mess up. Of course we're gonna be broken. Of course we're gonna crack and shatter and fail over and over and over again, because that's the intention of Hashem creating not perfect human beings. We're meant to mess up, and then from those pieces, piece together a wholeness that is so much more real and whole. And I remember in my life when I was completely, I've shared before that after I had my first son, I had severe postpartum depression, which led to depression and anxiety. And there was a moment where I actually felt like that shatteredness. I felt like I was completely shattered, and I just thought, this is it for me. Like, I'm just waiting for life to, to be 70 and just, that's it. Like, life's over for me. I'm done. Like, I wasn't suicidal, but I really felt like that was it. Like, I'm just broken and there's nothing left. I never thought I could be whole again in those moments. And Baruch Hashem, through treatment and the wholeness that I have now, or the empathy and the connection and understanding, I would never trade this. In that time, I didn't wish that on my worst enemy, and I still don't, what I went through, but I still would never go back and trade my new me for my old me, because the wholeness and the growth, the connection, just all of the things I've grown and learned from the wholeness I experienced now after that brokenness, after that trua, that's Ki Gadol that I am now, is a much more real wholeness. It's a emes wholeness. It's a longer wholeness than the wholeness that was before, that was more of a naive wholeness, or not bad, but for me. And so we don't wish upon us anyone any brokenness. And this takes me to one last thought. There's a lot of acronyms for Elul that we discussed in the Elul shir, but there's one that I didn't share with you, which comes from Rav Natan Spira, a Kabbalist, who shared that Elul is also an acronym for Aron Luchos, Vishivrei Luchos. Aron, Aleph, Luchos, they have the first Luchos. The Vav is Vishivrei, and the Shever, the fractured, the broken, Luchos, the second Luchos. And that's what Elul is, because the Luchos in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash, think about it, you would think they would want to have the new Luchos, but why have the old Luchos in them? They kept the fractured, broken Luchos that Moshe Rabbeinu broke in the Aron as well. Why hold on to those pieces? Because you can't get to the new Luchos if you don't have the fractured old Luchos. You don't get to the wholeness of the completion of the higher second Luchos without the broken fragments and pieces of the first brokenness. We actually learn that Moshe's greatest Yashar Kocha, when Hashem commands Moshe in his last days, now in these Parshios, what's the greatest moments of Moshe's life? Sheshibarta, Shever, when you broke the Luchos. The greatest moments of your life are not when everything was perfect. The greatest moments of your life was when you allowed yourself to fail, and when through those pieces, you took those pieces, pieced yourself back together, not to be who you were before, but to be who you were meant to be from those intentional fractures. And so
you made room for Hashem.
And you made space for Hashem. Exactly. And that's really what I was getting to, that Teshuvah, Tashuv Hey, is really what Teshuvah really means. Tashuv Hey means returning Hey, and Hey represents in life the gap. The Hey itself is the level of Hashem. Hey is Hashem's name. Hashem created the world through Hey, because Ches, we learned Ches is Chametz, and this is a Pesach class. Chametz has no room for Hashem. It's all I. There's no space. It's closed. Hey is a break. Through the breaks and the fractures and the mess ups and the fails in life, we create space for Hashem. And so Teshuvah is returning the Hey back to its source. It's really returning the Hey back to the name of Yod Hey Vav and Hey, returning the Malchus to Zah, reuniting the brokenness. It's really reuniting the Hey, which is the feminine, to Zah, which is Adam, the masculine. So reuniting these two, that yes, we have the brokenness, and now we want to close that gap, not by becoming whole again, but in my mind, I picture it as filling that gap with Kedusha, with connection, with love for Hashem, with trust and emunah in Hashem, with all of the things that I can only have. And all of life happens, like there's so many quotes of this that I love, but I'd say all of life happens in the gap between the Hey. When things don't go well, when we're suffering, when there's brokenness, that's where growth happens. That's where all growth happens, in beyond your comfort zone, you want to call it, or as Viktor Frankl calls it, in the space between action and reaction, or stimulus and response, whatever you want to call it, in that space where something doesn't go your way and there's brokenness, and then wholeness in bridging that gap. How do we bridge that gap? How do we work on ourselves? How do we cry and turn to others and go inwards and heal and connect to other people and bring Hashem and have teshuvah and tefillah? All of that happens in that Hey, and then returning that Hey is that really like closing that Hey, bringing the Hey back to the rest of Hashem's name, bringing that reunification that comes only after the brokenness, or only the new luchos that come only with the pieces of the broken luchos. I love that thought, that you can't have new luchos without the broken. You can't be who you are today without the pieces of you that were shattered, without the shvarim and the fractures and the truah. And so my kavanah, when I'm like, is so much deeper after I heard this, when I hear the shofar, just hearing and experiencing that shattering of our heart, and then leaning into that wholeness that comes after we experience all that, bringing it all back together and doing teshuvah to bring a wholeness and to reunite wholeness. And the Rabbi always said, we don't need bad things to happen to us to experience brokenness. The Rabbi said that just meditating or even thinking about the state of galus itself is enough to make ourselves feel broken. We don't want God to do bad things to us. We've had enough of that. Like I mentioned last week, the klalos, maybe I didn't say it, that I did, the Rav and the PS, not the Piasetzna, It was the Rav who's in Sanz in Netanya.
Oh, that's Joe.
Kleisenberg, thank you. He said that let Hashem hear the klalos. Let's say the klalos out loud last week in the Parsha. He didn't whisper it like other congregations because he went through the Holocaust. He said, let Hashem know that he already gave us the klalos. We already had enough to break us. We have had all the pain. We don't need more pain to be broken. We don't want more things to break us. We could just, even if Baruch Hashem, we haven't experienced in our own life anything shattering, it's enough to think about the pain of the reality of the world that we live in, of the suffering that happens around us, to be broken enough that we don't need to experience it ourselves. So we can meditate on the state of galus, on the distance and the gap in the hay, on the hiddenness of Kedusha, on the falseness that exists in the world, and enough to bring us to Shvarim, that we don't ask Hashem to bring upon us anything. And I bless all of us to have buckets and buckets of brachos, to achieve the wholeness, to piece back all the Am Yisrael should piece back together all of the fractures that we've been through this year and throughout all of history, to piece together to create a real wholeness of achdus and unity, of true oneness and achdus, and just revealed brachos. Adli dai, no more fractures, no more brachos, only the ultimate tekiah gedola, which is the last time or the ultimate time when Hashem, we mentioned in Tefillah that we'll blow the shofar, which was with the ultimate reading with Hashem, the revelation where Hashem reveals himself fully with the coming of Mashiach and the blast of the shofar. It might be speedily in our days. Thank you so much for joining. If you enjoyed this, leave a comment so I know that you watched it, because I don't know, people tell me they watch this year and I don't believe them, because I really just want to hi. And then I share it with your friends. Feel free to sponsor a shir in honor of someone you love. And have an amazing Rosh Hashana, and I'll see you in the next video.
Where do I find your shoes?